Okay, we're going to go ahead and discuss the plasma membrane a little bit. Okay. So the plasma membrane is a flexible boundary of a cell that separates the cell from its surroundings. So if this is our cell here, okay, you're going to see that there is a boundary that marks the edge of that cell, and that boundary is marked by this thing called a plasma membrane. The plasma membrane regulates or controls what goes in and what goes out of the cell. It also provides protection, meaning things that are bad can't get in, and support, so it allows it to keep its shape. When a plasma membrane regulates or controls what goes in and out of the cell, that's called being selectively permeable or having selective permeability. So move down here. Okay. Semi-permeable or selectively permeable means some molecules are allowed to pass through the plasma membrane at any time. Other molecules are only allowed in at certain times or in limited amounts. And some molecules are never allowed in. So semi-permeable or selectively permeable means that sometimes everything can come in, sometimes only certain things can come in, and sometimes nothing is allowed in. So the structure of the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane is made of a phospholipid bilayer. That's a double-layered sheet that makes up nearly all plasma membranes, and I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. So when I say a phospholipid, what do I mean? A phospholipid is made up of a phosphate head that looks like this, it looks like a head, and two fatty acid tails. They're like squiggly little lines or squiggly little tails that come off of this phospholipid head. Phospholipids are bipolar. That means that one side likes water a lot. That means hydrophilic. That's a new word. Hydrophilic means they like water or love water. And one side hates water and is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic means afraid of water or doesn't like water. So the phosphate head is hydrophilic. It loves water. And the fatty acid tails is hydrophobic. It hates water. So when I said that a plasma membrane is made of a phospholipid bilayer, I meant there are two layers of phospholipids. So here are the phospholipids heads, here are their tails. Here are the other side of the layer, so bilayer meaning two layers. So here's one layer of phospholipids, and here's another layer of phospholipids. And notice that on the outside of the cell and on the inside of the cell, there's usually water. So the heads, or the parts that love water, are going to point out towards that water, and the tails are going to be hidden in between the two layers of heads. Okay, so the hydrophilic heads face the outside of the cell where the water is. Then you have the hydrophobic tails, and they face each other. And then you have the hydrophilic heads that face the inside of the cell. So this is the bilayer, two layers of phospholipids, both with the hydrophilic heads showing or facing the water. One side facing the outside of the cell, one side facing the inside of the cell. The model that scientists have accepted for what the plasma membrane looks like is called the fluid mosaic model. The plasma membrane contains protein molecules that are embedded or put in the phospholipid bilayer. It also has carbohydrate molecules that are attached to many of the proteins. The organization of all these structures is called the fluid mosaic model. Now, if you've ever heard for diet that we need to have protein in our diet and we need to have carbohydrates in our diet, well, that's because a lot of these are used in cells. When they get broken down in our bellies and they get shipped off to all the cells, these molecules, these proteins and these carbohydrates are used to help build our cells. So the plasma contains protein molecules, and these protein molecules are used for a variety of things, like transport, which we'll talk about next unit. That's how we maintain homeostasis. for signaling, meaning how do you know that all the cells in your body are actually your cells? This is basically how the immune system works. This is another way, this is how we interact with our environment or react to our environment, as well as how our immune system works, like I said. So we will be going over that next unit, as well as when we do the human body. And carbohydrate molecules are used as signaling. So they signal to other cells that something is going on in the cell. So this is a picture of what the fluid mosaic model looks like. You have all of your phospholipids. Okay, here's the bilayer. There's one with the tails pointing down and one with the tails pointing up. And then you have these big chunky things, and these are your proteins. And the proteins have lots of jobs. There's ones that go partially across it, there's ones that sit on the outside of it, there's ones that only sit or that go all the way through. There's proteins that give it structure. They're like basically like a skeleton that holds the cell together. There are fats in the fluid mosaic model, or in the plasma membrane, and then there's the carbohydrates that are there for signaling. So the extracellular fluid, this is outside the cell and this is inside the cell. And inside the cell we have the cytoplasm, which we'll talk about more when we talk about all the different parts of the cell. So I hope this made sense. Please write down any questions you have on a sticky note and bring them in. Thank you very much.